All right, and welcome back to another episode of Crease Crankers. Joining me this week is Cornell's head coach Connor Buzcek. Coach, thank you very much for joining us. Congrats on the on this past weekend's win over Harvard. How are things going?
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Things are good. Coming down the stretch of the regular season, we got one more regular season Ivy League game this weekend, and then turn our attention to the playoffs.
That's it. That's it. Seems to be coming down to you and Yale there. See who can maybe look to host the Ivy League tournament and then get right into May. So yeah. So Coach, obviously, wanted to touch on you've had a certainly a great playing career at Cornell, right? Then joined right into the coaching ranks there. Kind of just walk me through maybe what kind of sold you on Cornell when you were getting recruited there, and then kind of what made the decision. What made the decision for you to pretty easy to stick around and coach.
Sure. Yeah. In the recruiting process, I was fortunate to see some great places and be recruited by some awesome schools. And at the end of the
Mhm.
day, it tends to be more of a gut feel than anything else. And
Sure.
when I stepped foot
Sure.
on campus here, I was not sure if I was an Ivy League guy necessarily, but I was just blown away by the
Mhm.
culture, by the people, by the desire to be great, and kind of the way this group interacts with one another. And so I remember leaving with a very vivid feel that this is a place that surrounds you with awesome people. It demands a lot out of you, both academically and athletically. And, for that,
Sure.
our guys are better. And so I was very fortunate to come and kind of have that feeling towards this place. And obviously, made that decision. 2009, and really haven't looked back
Mhm.
since, never left, and
Yeah.
has kind of led me into what I do now, and so fortunate to still be here working with some incredible people and young men.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of it's like almost you feel something in your stomach that kind of just points you in that direction. You're like, okay, I think I made the correct decision here. Um, but yeah, so just moving on into, you kind of touch on some culture pieces, right? I guess in your sense, I read something on the website, right? It seems like family is a big piece of kind of Cornell, right? And like the alumni network, right? And family. And that might have gotten, when you took over the head coaching position, right? Certainly a turbulent time when it came to the COVID-19 pandemic and things like that. Would you say that was kind of the sticking point, right? Maybe what kind of got you through certainly that time, but then is that certainly maybe the biggest selling piece, I guess, about Cornell men's lacrosse?
There's no doubt. I think the culture here is what makes this place what it is, and the cool part is that the identity has been the same for 50 years. Since the 70s and the success that they had there, and even before that, it's really Coach Moran left a lasting legacy in what it means to be a part of this program and how you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And the only expectation is you work as hard as you possibly can, and realistically with the expectation that our team is going to benefit. You're not looking for what that individual benefit might be. And certainly, I learned it, grew up in it, matured in this system. And now I'm fortunate to kind of be sitting in the seat I am. And just keep it in perspective that, I inherited a situation that's pretty incredible. And so for us and for every player that puts on the jersey, it's about, upholding the standard, upholding the tradition, and making sure that you're leaving a lasting legacy, and leaving this place better than you found it. And so for us every day, it's a labor of love. It's truly it's a job, but it's a job that we love to do. And we're so passionate about the young men in our program, the opportunity to honor that legacy, and to keep building on that tradition. And like you mentioned, I think families, it overused cliche a little bit in sports, but here it means something. It's something that is deep within our program in terms of the alumni engagement and how frequently our alums are around, how much they care about our young men and their success, both on the field and off the field, and doing everything in their power to make sure that our program continues to operate, at the highest level of college lacrosse. And so, again, it is certainly a privilege and an honor, but there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. And I think every young man that steps on campus here, our staff, our support staff, everybody feels that onus to make sure that we're carrying that torch forward and making this place better.
Nice. Love it. Awesome. And then a little bit of kind of so Ryan Goldstein, current attackman now. Dad played at Cornell, correct? So a little bit of family atmosphere, family connect there. Love to hear that. My dad, actually, funny enough, played with a bunch of the Goldsteins growing up over on Long Island. But so yeah, had to connect the dots there.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. So yeah, again, I think I think the biggest piece you touched on, right, is kind of practicing what you preach, right? It's a cliche, but as long as you practice, what you preach, it's not really cliche, right? And it's certainly going to have its lasting impact. So, yeah, moving on, Coach. I think wanted to touch on winning in May, right? You kind of touched on it, at the start right here. We're getting ready to go into May, right? So now you kind of had an experience as a player, certainly playing in a Final Four at Cornell, and then your first year at the helm, in 2022, making it to the championship game. So I guess in your mind, what does it take to win in May? What are the keys? Is it obviously just a little bit of getting hot at the right time? But in your mind, the biggest keys to winning in May?
Yeah, it's a challenge. By the time you get to May, everybody you play is going to be really talented and really good. And
Hmm.
so, obviously, it takes a little bit of luck on the sense that things start to come together at the right time, that you're healthy at the
Sure.
right time, that you're playing your best ball at the right time. But everything we do for 11 months is building towards what are you able to do in May, and how do how are you able to continue to keep getting better and keep preparing. And again,
Right.
by this point, everybody's beaten and bruised a little bit after a long regular season, and the best is still ahead of us is the hope. And so for us, it's about making sure that we are doing everything with the intent of improving over the course of the year and day to day, and focusing on what the little things are that we can keep playing,
Mhm.
executing at a high level. But for us, realistically, it's about the effort and the energy and the enthusiasm. And so that's stuff that we harp on every single day that we're together as a team, and focus on making it the best version of us every time we are together. And you hope that if you start to build that consistency and the good habits through the course of the year, that that's the foundational piece that you fall back on when you play great teams, and when the moment's the biggest, and the season's on the line, that guys can kind of rely on one another to do the little things, to work as hard as they possibly can, and to try to get the result that you're looking
Sure.
for.
Sure. Right. Make it, yeah, right. Practice hard, right? Then in the game, it's a little easier, things like that. Obviously, yeah, all that connects. I guess, would that say, are you, maybe, I guess, when you kind of touch on some points, right? Nobody's essentially, certainly maybe 100% healthy at this point in the year. Do you guys ramp down a little bit in practice intensity, maybe just like in lengthwise, but certainly practice is always intense, right? But is there anything you guys do to maybe try to make sure you are as healthy as you can be at this point in the season, or just little details like that? I guess, if you wouldn't mind walking us through things like that.
Yeah, I think as the season progresses, you try to certainly be cognizant of the volume. You don't want to
Right.
overdo it. The worst thing we can do is spend too much time doing something during the course of the week, and then we don't have the legs to execute in the game. And so
Hmm.
everything that we did was all for naught. And if you kind of push it to that level, but for us, it's about having that consistent intensity every day, and making sure that we will manage the duration from the staff side, and making sure that the timing's right and the volume's right. But the expectation from the guys is the exact same. When you
Right.
show up, whatever's put in front of you,
It's a work
attack
day.
it, compete,
Yep.
have fun, go through it. But certainly on our side, it is always being conscientious of where are we at physically, how are the legs,
Sure.
what do we need to work on, and how do we do so in the most efficient way possible, so that we're not spending 30, 35 minutes on a single period. Obviously, that it would be something we have to work on and we have to get better at, but what is that give and take? Where is that fine line? And so I think that that's where the big feel comes into it, where again there's
Sure.
technology and wearable technology that can tell you volumes, but at the end of the day you got to know where your team's at and what they need. And so our staff does an incredible job of setting those guys up to be successful on game day. And as the season comes down the stretch, maybe it's less practice, but the same intensity, the same competitive
Right.
level, just
Right.
making sure we are cognizant of how much time we're spending out there and how much stress we're putting on them.
Yeah, it's amazing where, I'm sure, like, even based on where and you were playing, where recovery has gone to now, to a point, and then obviously, you played in the professional ranks, right? I mean, it's pretty amazing just to see all the technology and, the time being spent on just pure recovery. And when you think about it, I mean, that Final Four weekend is, you're playing two games in, less than 72 hours it is. So it's certainly, and then I wanted to talk, like, I mean, have you seen teams kind of do that where early in the season, I believe it was like Penn played down at UNC and they played Duke, right? Where they tried to emulate almost like a Friday, Sunday kind of calendar in a way.
Sure.
Yeah. Have you, like, is that what teams are trying to do? Is that as simple as it is? They're just trying to emulate what championship weekend is kind of all about.
No doubt. I think you try to put your guys in those positions, and again, just to get an understanding of the rhythm, the timing, the best practices, and the best way, just like anything else, to get yourself to that spot is practicing it and having that experience and going through that routine of what it is to play 2 and 3 games, and how quick that turnaround is, and how you do, the preparation and the scout and all that sort of stuff, and how deep you want to go based on the time allotted. So I think there's a lot of, components that go into it. And, unless you have that experience, you just, you're feeling your way through it. And so I think a lot of teams try to, like you said, simulate that process, and give themselves an opportunity when, it's not win or go home, but when there's, an opportunity to review your process if you don't like how it turned out, and figure out how we can be better at it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So jumping right ahead, I would say you guys have probably played two of the most entertaining games that we've seen here this year when it comes to the Syracuse game, and then recently just you're on Long Island here against playing against Notre Dame. So I guess in your mind, just like the back and forth of those games, I think obviously in both those games you guys found yourselves maybe trailing at times, and then you go in a game, right? It's a game of runs. Lacrosse is similar in basketball, right, where it's a game of runs. I guess is that something you're always preaching to your team, and is that something you maybe practice? I remember when I played, right, we had to do like situational scrimmages, like, hey, we're down 4 here, 5 minutes to go before the half, right? Let's go on a 4-goal run. So is that stuff that you all kind of, I'm sure, try to simulate in practice?
Yeah, as much as we can. We
Yeah.
played in some hectic games,
Ideally,
and
yeah, ideally
games
don't want to
that
go down by that much, but yeah.
for us, it's been just about being tested consistently. We put a schedule together that, we played, majority of the top 10 teams in the country. And, some results we've liked and some we haven't. But, the whole point is to keep building, and to be tested at that level, and to play against the best. And usually, even if you win those games, you come out with plenty of tape of things you got to get better, and things that, maybe somebody exposed. And so the hope was to play anybody and everybody, and have our a good idea of who we are by this point, make sure that identity settled, make sure that X's and O's and execution is where we need it to be. And again, from every one of those games, when you play a great team, you're going to find some more out about yourself. And again, that's both how you compete and the way you manage the situations and the ups and the downs and the adversity, but also schematically and execution wise, where you got to get better. And so we've been very fortunate. We've played some great teams. We've had some success. We've had some games that have gotten away from us. And at the end of the day, our hope is that makes us the team that we want to be as we head towards May, and again, continue to peak at the right time.
Definitely, definitely. So I guess you kind of touched on like, your identity. What have you been most, I guess, impressed by about this current group of guys? And maybe what are one or two things, not going too deep, right, that you're looking to maybe drive home here as we kind of approach the Ivy League tournament?
Yeah, again, the identity of Cornell Lacrosse, like we mentioned earlier, has kind of been set over the years. And so we want to make sure we're playing that, tough, competitive hustle effort, kind of trumps everything type of lacrosse, that it doesn't always have to be pretty, but it's got to be tough, and it's got to be competitive. And so ground balls and, little plays here and there mean a lot to us. And so we're always hoping to be the hardest working team on the field. And again, some games you are, and some games, you got teams that are pushing you to the very limit there to be that team. And so for us, it's making sure that we are always falling back on those principles. And when things are get hard, that we're focused on making the next little play. And so in terms of, execution and things we can continue to do better, I think we're still a work on progress on both sides. I think we've had some great appearances on both offense and defense, and we've had some games that we've got to clean some things up. And so trying to shore up the team offense and the team defense down the stretch. And then obviously the special teams, at the end of the year, a few ride backs or successful clears, make all the difference when you're playing a great team and you're just looking for a small margin there on possessions, on opportunities, on however you want to break that down. And so I think that's a focus for everybody as you get here. So between the special teams, both sides of the ball, and being tough off the ground, those are the things that kind of stick out. Is, again, I'm not sure that would change if we talked in February versus now, but
Yeah, no, but
if you're sound there, it's going to make you successful down the stretch.
that's it. Yeah, no, that's certainly it. So I guess, and now just maybe taking a step back, maybe to, you kind of emphasize some things, right? Like toughness. We want to be the toughest team. Ground balls doesn't have to be pretty, but it has to be tough. So I guess when you're now maybe, you were recruited to Cornell, right? Now when you're on the other side of things, when you're out here on the recruiting trail, I'm going to go out there on a limb and say maybe one of the biggest things you look for is toughness in some of the recruits, right? And so I guess maybe some things that, whether it's doesn't always have to be, you don't always have to be maybe the 6'5" guy, but, maybe just the things that you look for, some intangibles that you look for in kids, that can go play for the Big Red.
Sure. Obviously it starts with, the things you see on the field, and that kind of starts the conversation, around, specific individuals, and, appreciating what they're bringing to the table, as in terms of a lacrosse player, in terms of a teammate, in terms of their effort, their hustle on the field. But then from there, we want to know, more about the young man. We want to know, how does he interact with his teammates? How well is he liked within the locker room? How well does he lead? How willing is he to step outside his comfort zone and be the guy, that is demanding it out of his teammates? And the reality is, for young men, that's a hard step to take. You want to be liked more than respected at times, and so that's the give and take that we're looking for: mature young men that are hard workers and willing to be a part of something bigger than themselves. We've been fortunate to have some superstars here that are the hardest working, toughest dudes I've been around, and they're superstars that are really well loved by their teammates, and that's not always the case. And so for us, we're looking for those guys that are going to fit our locker room, that are going to have that selfless mentality, that are willing to give of themselves for the greater good. And then the on-field play, obviously, you're looking for, the athletic, the high IQ, the skilled, but those all kind of pale in comparison to the type of person, the type of leader that young man is, because in reality, we're all picking guys that are on a 5 or 6 year time horizon. We're not looking for maybe on this specific day who's the best lacrosse player, who's the guy that's going to step on the field for us today and help us win. You're looking for the guy that's going to continue to get better, a guy that's going to make your locker room better, a guy that, even if he doesn't play from the time he steps on campus, that he's comfortable being a part of a system, being a part of a group, and continuing to give themselves for the betterment of the group, not just those individual accolades. So those pieces go a long way for us, and I would imagine most programs talk about that. But obviously, for us, I think it's imperative that you get the right people in your locker room more than the right lacrosse players.
I think I'm glad you brought, because obviously I wanted to bring up, right. This is kind of a perfect segue to the CJ Kirst, right? CJ Kirst is an incredible player. It's very, it's evident that you can see that, right? He brings it all on the field. But I thought one of the coolest things I saw was every time one of his teammates scores, he's the first one that's jumping, hooting, hollering, going right up to his boy, being like, dapping him up, right? And so I think that what you just hit, all those points, right? We have some maybe superstars who are the hardest working guys on our team. That's what we're looking for. So, that's evident to me. And I think, that's something that I always looked at, even when I look at like my old highlights. It's like, which one of my boys were hyped that I scored,
Sure.
right? Or, things like that. So that's pretty awesome to hear, right, directly from you. And I think CJ embodies that. And, I guess, so maybe just touching on, besides that, some other things that I guess impress you the most about CJ, and what he's been able to do, throughout his career there.
Sure. Obviously he's an incredibly talented individual. He's a great athlete. He's a great lacrosse player. He's skilled. His IQ's off the charts. But I think what sets him apart is just those things that we talked about. He's as tough in the ride and off the ground as he is, in a 6-on-6 set. And he's always looking out for the guys around him, trying to bring their game up, and not just worried about what kind of stat line he has. And when a guy like that comes into your building, and you see that, one of the most talented guys is also the guy that's on the field before practice, after practice, getting extra workouts in, showing up on the weekends, that stuff sets the standard. And again, guys that are just trying to get by, and guys that are trying to, crack the lineup, you see a lot of those guys that work hard. But when the guy that already kind of seemingly has it all figured out on the field is also constantly working at his craft, it just sets that standard for the rest of the room. And again, I've been around some really impressive lacrosse players over the course of my time here. And, whether it's Kirst, whether it was Teat, whether it was Pinnell, those guys were much the same. They showed up with the juice, and they worked as hard as anybody, and they just loved the process as much as the outcome. And so it's no surprise when those guys are successful. But when you have those guys in your room, they bring everybody up with them, because they see how hard those guys work for the success, and care about the guys around them. And so, those little things, the energy, obviously goes a long way on the field, and guys appreciate that. And so I think those are the things that really set CJ apart. As obviously lacrosse player, he's off the charts. It's the person that really makes this program better, though.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Be a great teammate, right? I think that's the biggest takeaway, right? Just be a great teammate no matter what, no matter the circumstance, no matter their, whatever it is in the season, game, outcome, just, continue to be a great teammate. So CJ embodies that, and that's awesome to see. I guess just moving on, you kind of mentioned the name Jeff T, right? And now you have another number 51 who's a freshman this year, has had some, some impressive moments for you guys. Was that, I guess, just real, like, was that number? Did he want the number 51? Did you guys kind of say, hey, like maybe take the number 51? Was that, was that kind of his decision? Just walk me through that one, I guess,
Yeah, it was
because
his
their
decision. You
styles
know,
are
yeah,
okay. Got
they're
it. Their
remarkably similar.
styles are uncanny. I mean, it is like, wow, that's Jeff T out there. No, it's not.
Yeah. He Willem's a special young man. You know, I think so coming through, he played at the Hill Academy, played for Jeff Teat, and so those two have a great bond and a relationship. And so obviously, the way they play is very similar, but I think out of respect, honestly, for Jeff, he took that number and obviously has put up, the plays and put the stuff on tape that makes it look and resemble a lot like Jeff. And so it's almost too easy of a comparison at times, but uh, he's one of those guys that shows up. There's not much that rattles the young man. He shows up. He's competitive. He's tough. He does all the little things. He's willing to be a part of it. And for him, he was an attacker when he showed up, and we thought the best fit was at midfield, and he didn't bad not. And he's quickly become a guy that we can rely on in the biggest moments, and has really added to the dynamic ability of our offense. And so I think he's just scratching the surface. I think he obviously came in with an incredible skill set. But still, settling in and getting used to college lacrosse and our system. And so I think he's just getting going. But what he's brought to us so far has been nothing short of spectacular.
Yeah, I think, and you have, right, obviously, Willem, and then of course Ryan, two freshmen who are playing some big minutes for you guys, right? And I always think back, there's times where you can hit like a freshman wall, right, where it's just like, your shots aren't falling, you're getting scouted more now, the goalies know where you're going, things like that. I guess in your mind, just what have what have you maybe said to them, or just tried to at least kind of coach some things and let them know, like, hey, that might happen, but you just got to keep battling through that.
Yeah, again, for both of those guys, they've played at really high levels throughout the course of their high school careers. Whether it was club, whether it was prep school, whether it was high school ball. Those guys have been through long stretches, and for a lot of those guys, specifically the Canadians, they finish up the season and then they start their box season and they play another 20-25 games. And so specifically the Canadians, and the way and the intensity of that junior system, those guys are prepared. They've played a lot of big games. They've played back-to-back nights. They've played 7-game series, just to get to the Minto, and then you got to play through the whole Minto system. And so when those guys hit that point, they've got a little bit more a little bit more in the tank when it comes to playing through long years and competitive years and getting beat up and doing all those things. But, Ryan was a PG, went to Salisbury last year and had a similar experience where he played a lot of great defenders, a lot of great teams through a long season. And so I think that, the extra time for those guys, the reps that they've gotten at high levels has really helped them. And fortunately, to this point, they really haven't hit that plateau just yet. And so we're hoping that continues, for another month. But again, just really impressive young men and talented individuals, but very mature on the spectrum of things and how they showed up and what they've been able to do for us.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Just, I guess, one final question here, Coach. We'll let you go. You were obviously, played in the professional ranks, right? Got a little taste of the PLL. Retired was, I believe it was 2 years ago now in the spring, 2022. Retired, I think I read.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yep.
2022. So I guess just your thoughts on the PLL, your experience, where you see the league going, and obviously just the excitement level around it, and things like that.
Yeah, I think they're doing a great job giving it a platform, finding a way to make it accessible by so many, and getting great broadcasts out there, and growing the fan base. Obviously, I think it was a huge step for them to move towards, the city model and start to have some, ties and some individuals that are following teams because it's their hometown team rather than maybe individuals. And so, again, I think they're doing a heck of a job. I think they're so innovative, and they're so in tune to kind of what's selling and what's getting clicks, and how are we able to keep expanding this footprint of lacrosse. And so kudos to those guys. I think they've done nothing short of an incredible job, and really think they're just getting going. I think once they start to settle down and kind of build that fan base through the tour model, and then start to settle into cities, I think it'll really start kicking it into gear and taking that next step. But they've done such a good job already in the first few years in the infancy of that league. And again, I think they're just getting where they want to go, and starting to grow it in different times of the year with the Sixes tournament and different connections with the youth organizations. And so I think they're really just turning themselves into a lacrosse focused business, where it's not pro lacrosse necessarily, but it's how do we bring all this together at some level, and make sure that everybody's pushing this thing forward. And I think they've done a really good job strategically building that out.
Definitely. Yeah, agreed. I'm really excited about the city model thing. I think that's going to just, you'll start to see some more homegrown, just natural excitement, and things surrounding that. So Coach, thank you very much once again for your time. This has been awesome to chop it up with you. And once again, good luck the rest of the way. We'll be pulling for you, and go get it done in May.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me.